The Nurathi were known throughout the galaxy as the ultimate protectors. For 12,000 years, they had safeguarded vulnerable species, establishing sanctuaries, mediating conflicts, and ensuring that no civilization faced extinction on their watch. Their entire culture was built on the sacred principle of preservation, of life, of knowledge, of potential. So when the Nurathi Council summoned humanity to receive the title of Guardians of the Future, every species in the galaxy took notice. The ceremony was unprecedented. Even the ancient Velker, who rarely left their crystalline archives, attended to witness this moment. High Protector HFY stood before the assembled delegates, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with solemn purpose. We Nurathi have spent millennia protecting the young, the weak, and the vulnerable. Today, we acknowledge a species that has shown us a form of guardianship we had forgotten. Ambassador James Sullivan stood on the ceremonial platform, visibly uncomfortable with the attention. He had been briefed that this was important, but no one had explained why the galaxy's most respected protectors were honoring humanity. 3 cycles ago, HFY continued, the colony ship Bright Hope carrying 4,000 plenary children suffered catastrophic engine failure in the dead zone, a region of space so remote and dangerous that even our fastest rescue ships would have arrived too late. The audience knew this story. The plenary delegation shifted uncomfortably, their crystalline forms dimming with the memory of that desperate day. The human cargo vessel Redemption was the only ship within range. It was hauling industrial equipment, completely unsuited for rescue operations. Its crew of 37 had no legal obligation, no tactical advantage, and no realistic chance of success. The dead zone was experiencing solar storms. Any rescue attempt would likely result in the loss of both ships. HFY's patterns brightened with intensity. The human captain, Rebecca Torres, didn't hesitate. She said 3 words, "Children need help." Then she diverted immediately. A holographic display materialized, showing the Redemption forcing its way through radiation storms that should have torn it apart. The human crew had stripped their own ship's shielding to reinforce the rescue shuttles. They had given up their own life support reserves to extend the time they could search. When their equipment failed, they had jury-rigged solutions from cargo supplies. Captain Torres and her crew saved all 4,000 children, HFY said. 23 humans died in the process, including the captain herself. She stayed behind to manually pilot the damaged Redemption away from the colony ship, drawing the worst of the solar storm's impact. The assembly was silent. The plenary delegates light-pulsed with grief and gratitude. But this was not an isolated incident, HFY continued. We have studied human history. On their own world, before they reached the stars, humans would risk everything to save those in danger. They ran into burning buildings. They dove into floods. They gave their lives for strangers without hesitation. They created entire professions, firefighters, lifeguards, emergency responders, devoted to sacrificing their own safety for others. A Tharnian scholar raised an appendage. High Protector, forgive me, but such behavior exists in many species. What makes humans unique? HFY's patterns shifted to something resembling sadness. Because they do it even when no one is watching. Even when it's not their responsibility. Even when the odds are impossible. She pulled up more records. Humans diverting colony ships to rescue stranded aliens. Human engineers volunteering for dangerous repairs on stations they'd never visited. Human medics staying behind during evacuations to treat the wounded of species they'd just met. We Nurathi protect because it is our cultural duty, HFY explained. It is rational, organized, and effective. But humans protect because they cannot help themselves. They see someone in danger, and something in their biology compels them to act. They call it empathy, but it's more than that. It's an instinct so powerful it overrides their own survival. James finally spoke, his voice rough with emotion. High Protector, we're not special. We're just doing what needs to be done. Exactly, Shvara said softly. You don't protect because you're commanded to. You don't calculate the cost-benefit. You simply see a child in danger, and you move. No species council, no debate, no hesitation. This is why we name you guardians of the future. She approached James, placing a crystalline medallion around his neck. The Nurathi have protected the galaxy through wisdom and preparation. But wisdom can be slow. Preparation can be insufficient. Sometimes, the future needs guardians who act on instinct, who refuse to accept that some lives aren't worth saving, who will break every rule and risk everything for those who cannot save themselves. The assembly rose in unanimous agreement, something that hadn't happened in council history. Even species that had been wary of humanity now saw them differently. A young Valorian student later asked her teacher why humans were so willing to sacrifice themselves for others. The teacher, who had spent decades studying Earth's history, gave the only answer that made sense. Because on their death world, they learned that survival meant protecting each other. A human alone dies. Humans together become indestructible. They evolved to save each other, and now they can't turn that instinct off, even for aliens they just met. James returned to Earth carrying the medallion and a message from the Nurathi: guard them as you guard your own. The galaxy is safer because you cannot stop yourselves from. In the years that followed, humanity earned their title again and again. Not through military might or technological superiority, but through the simple, stubborn refusal to let others die when there was even the slimmest chance of saving them. The galaxy's most protective species had found something more powerful than organization and wisdom. They had found humans, who protected not because they should, but because they must.